There comes a moment in every deep human connection when illusion fades and truth finally enters the room. Most people believe love begins when someone notices your beauty, your kindness, or your strengths. But Carl Jung suggested something much deeper. He believed that real connection begins when the masks come off. The moment your soulmate starts to understand who you truly are, something unexpected begins to happen inside them. Their entire view of you starts to change. This happens because they did not meet the complete version of you in the beginning. They met pieces of you. They met appearances, assumptions, expectations, and impressions. Like all people, they unconsciously created an image of who they believed you were. Jung believed that every person projects hidden desires and unfinished parts of themselves onto others. In the beginning, these projections feel real, they feel certain. But eventually reality arrives, and when your soulmate discovers the truth about you, not the surface, not the role you play, but the deeper reality of who you are, they become emotionally overwhelmed. They begin to realize that your silence was never weakness, your distance was never rejection, your mystery was never confusion. They start to understand that you were carrying burdens they never saw. They recognize struggles that took place behind closed doors while you continued moving forward. Suddenly, everything they misunderstood begins connecting together. Moments that once seemed confusing now make sense. Reactions they judged too quickly begin to reveal a deeper meaning. They see things they missed before. True connection does not begin when two people admire each other's appearance, attention, or perfection. It begins at the exact moment when illusion disappears and authenticity takes its place. Carl Jung believed that human relationships rarely begin with complete truth. Instead, people often meet through projections. They see in others what they hope to find. They see what they secretly desire. They see what they unconsciously need. At first, this creates excitement because imagination feels safer than reality. Imagination allows people to fill in the missing pieces. It allows them to create stories that make them feel comfortable. But every meaningful relationship eventually reaches a point where the masks become too heavy to carry and the truth begins to reveal itself. That is where real transformation begins. When your soulmate learns the truth about you, they realize you were never the simple story they created in their mind. You were deeper than their assumptions. You were quieter than their expectations. You were stronger than they ever understood. They begin to see that your silence was not emptiness. It was reflection. Your distance was not indifference. It was self-respect. Your calmness was not weakness. It was emotional discipline developed through experiences they never witnessed. This realization can feel overwhelming because truth has a powerful effect on people. Truth does not only reveal another person, it reveals ourselves. The moment someone truly sees you, they are also forced to question their own understanding. They begin examining their own assumptions. They reconsider their own judgments. They start wondering how many things they misunderstood because they never looked deeply enough. They remember conversations they dismissed. They remember moments they overlooked. They remember details they once considered unimportant. Now those same memories appear completely different because their awareness has changed. Jung often described relationships as mirrors. We do not simply meet another person. We encounter hidden parts of ourselves through them. Your soulmate may discover that the truth about you awakens emotions they have been avoiding for years. They may realize they admired your strength because they struggled to trust their own. They may recognize your patience because they lived with inner chaos. They may finally understand that your presence challenged them to grow in ways they never expected. This realization feels intense because truth destroys fantasy. Fantasy creates comfort. Fantasy creates control. Truth demands acceptance. And acceptance can be difficult when someone realizes that what they were searching for may have been standing in front of them all along. But the most important lesson is this. You did not become valuable because someone finally noticed your worth. Your value existed long before recognition arrived. You were already carrying your depth, your wisdom, your experiences, and your identity. Their awakening did not create your worth. It simply revealed what had always been there. This is why genuine connection is so rare. It requires both people to stop performing and start being real. It asks them to move beyond appearances and meet each other honestly. The strongest relationships are not built on perfection. They are built on truth. They are built on the courage to see reality and remain connected anyway. Sometimes the moment someone finally discovers who you truly are becomes the moment they realize they can never see the world in the same way again. Many people believe they fall in love with a person. Carl Jung suggested something far more mysterious. In the beginning, people often fall in love with an image. Before true understanding appears, the mind quietly creates expectations, stories, and assumptions about who another person must be. This is not intentional deception. It is a natural part of human psychology. We see fragments of a person and unconsciously complete the picture ourselves. We interpret silence as personality. We interpret attention as devotion. We interpret distance as mystery. We interpret kindness as permanence. We create meanings that may never have existed. This is how projections are formed. When your soulmate first entered your life, they may have believed they understood you completely. They formed ideas about your emotions, your thoughts, your intentions, and your identity. They believed they knew your depth because they experienced your presence. But knowing someone and imagining someone are not the same thing. Jung believed that every human being carries hidden fears, desires, and unfinished emotional patterns. Instead of recognizing these things within ourselves, we often place them onto others. That is why people sometimes feel shocked when they discover the truth about someone they thought they understood. Perhaps your soulmate imagined that you needed constant reassurance, only to discover your independence. Perhaps they believed your quiet nature reflected uncertainty, only to discover wisdom. Perhaps they thought your patience meant waiting, only to realize it was self-control. Perhaps they believed your kindness came from weakness, only to learn it came from strength. They expected one version of you and encountered another. The image they created begins to crack. This moment can feel uncomfortable because projections create emotional safety. When people believe they understand someone, they feel secure. Expectations create certainty. But truth removes certainty and replaces it with reality. Reality is deeper. Reality is more complex. Reality cannot be controlled. Jung explained that relationships often begin with projection, but they survive only through awareness. Eventually, people must choose between loving the image and learning the truth. Many relationships fail because individuals become attached to who they imagined instead of who actually stands before them. Meaningful relationships grow stronger because they allow illusion to disappear. Your soulmate may begin revisiting old memories. They may realize that they never truly saw you the way they thought they did. They remember situations that once seemed confusing. Now those moments suddenly make sense. They begin to understand that they were not responding to your reality. They were responding to their own expectations. This realization changes everything. Because they start to understand that your value never depended on their understanding. You existed fully before they recognized your depth. Your inner world existed before they learned about it. Your emotions, your resilience, your quiet battles, and your hidden strength were always there. The truth about you becomes powerful because it forces them to confront a difficult question. Did they ever truly know you? Or did they only know the version they created in their mind? As this question grows stronger, their perspective begins to shift. They stop seeing you as a fantasy. They stop seeing you as an idea. They stop seeing you as a collection of assumptions. Instead, they begin seeing you as a complete human being. And that is where authentic connection begins. Not in perfection, not in projection, not in fantasy, but in the courage to allow illusion to disappear and remain present when truth finally arrives. Discovering someone's truth can create a transformation so powerful that it feels like emotional chaos. Most people assume truth immediately brings peace. Jung believed something different. He understood that truth often arrives like a storm before it becomes clarity. When your soulmate finally learns the deeper reality of who you are, they do not simply gain new information. They experience an internal shift. What once felt certain becomes uncertain. What once seemed obvious becomes questionable. What they ignored becomes impossible to forget. This emotional movement can feel overwhelming because genuine truth changes the person who receives it. People rarely expect another human being to be deeper than the story they created in their own minds. At first, they believe they understand your reactions, your choices, your silence, and your distance. They assume they know your motivations. They believe they understand what drives you. But the moment they discover the layers beneath your actions, everything begins to change. They realize that your quiet moments contained meaning they never recognized. They realize that your strength was built through experiences they never witnessed. They realize that your resilience came from battles they never knew existed. The person they thought they understood suddenly becomes larger, deeper, and more complex than they ever imagined. And that realization creates emotional chaos, because every assumption must be re-examined. Old judgments begin to fall apart. Past conclusions begin to lose their certainty. Memories are revisited through a completely different lens. The more they understand, the more they recognize how much they previously missed. This can create feelings of regret. It can create feelings of admiration. It can create feelings of longing. It can even create feelings of guilt. They may wonder why they failed to see your depth sooner. They may question moments when they misunderstood your intentions. They may replay conversations and realize that the truth was present all along, hidden beneath assumptions they never challenged. As this process continues, they begin seeing not only you differently, but themselves as well. They become aware of their own projections. They become aware of their own fears. They become aware of the stories they created to make sense of things they did not fully understand. This awareness is not always comfortable. Growth rarely is. But it is through this discomfort that transformation becomes possible. The truth about you becomes a catalyst for their own self-discovery. And as they continue learning who you really are, they begin realizing something even more important. Authentic connection is not about finding perfection. It is not about finding someone who matches every expectation. It is not about finding a fantasy that never changes. Authentic connection is about seeing reality clearly. It is about accepting complexity. It is about recognizing both strength and vulnerability. It is about understanding that every person carries stories, struggles, wounds, wisdom, and experiences that cannot be seen immediately. When someone finally understands this truth about you, they no longer relate to an image. They relate to the real person standing before them. And that is the moment a relationship moves beyond illusion and enters something far more meaningful. Because true connection begins when truth arrives, and both people choose to stay. They begin to realize that your quiet moments carried thoughts they never imagined. They start to understand that your patience was not something you were born with. It was built through struggle. It was developed through challenges they never witnessed. They recognize that your strength was not effortless. It came from experiences hidden beneath the surface. Understanding another person at a deeper level requires inner change. Carl Jung often described transformation as the moment when the image we have of ourselves meets the reality we can no longer ignore. As your soulmate learns more about who you truly are, they may begin asking difficult questions. They may wonder why they misunderstood you. They may question why they overlooked certain signs. They may ask themselves why your presence started affecting them more strongly only after they finally understood your true nature. When people encounter truth, They often discover that many of their emotions were built on incomplete understanding. They begin realizing that they judged certain situations too quickly. They may recognize that they confused independence with distance. They may understand that they mistook calmness for coldness. They may realize that they interpreted silence as absence when it was actually reflection. As these realizations grow, old memories begin returning to the surface. Conversations that once seemed ordinary suddenly carry new meaning. Moments they dismissed begin appearing in their thoughts again. Details they barely noticed before now seem important. This awakening can feel overwhelming because truth removes emotional shortcuts. Before understanding, everything appeared simple. After understanding, everything becomes more complex. They begin noticing things they never appreciated before. Your consistency becomes visible. Your emotional discipline becomes visible. Your quiet strength becomes visible. Your hidden depth becomes visible. Jung believed that growth happens when the unconscious becomes conscious. Transformation begins when hidden realities are finally seen. Your soulmate may not immediately understand what is happening inside them. What feels like emotional intensity is often awareness expanding. They are not becoming lost. They are becoming more aware of what has always been there. Part of them may want to hold on to old assumptions because assumptions feel familiar. Familiar ideas create comfort. Familiar stories feel safe. But another part of them understands that they cannot return to that version of reality anymore. Once truth enters awareness, pretending becomes difficult. This may be one reason why meaningful relationships leave such a lasting impact. They push people beyond comfort. They encourage understanding. They challenge old beliefs. Your soulmate's emotional reaction may not come from dramatic events. It may not come from a single conversation or a life-changing moment. Sometimes people change simply because they finally see someone clearly. They finally recognize strength where they expected weakness. They finally discover depth where they expected simplicity. They finally realize that what seemed ordinary was carrying extraordinary meaning all along. And in that realization, they discover something powerful. Learning the truth about another person is never only about that person. It becomes a mirror. It reveals hidden parts of ourselves. That is why truth transforms people. That is why awareness feels so intense. And that is why, after truly seeing you, they may never experience connection in the same way again. Carl Jung believed that relationships are far more than emotional experiences shared between two people. He suggested that every meaningful connection acts as a mirror through which hidden parts of ourselves begin to emerge. Most people believe they enter relationships searching for comfort, understanding, or companionship. But often they enter relationships to discover themselves without realizing it. This explains why some people leave a permanent mark on our lives, while others quietly fade away. Certain connections awaken something buried deep within us. And once that awakening begins, it becomes difficult to return to who we were before. As your soulmate learns the truth about you, they may believe they are simply discovering your story. In reality, they are also discovering parts of themselves. This is where emotional intensity begins. They start recognizing emotions they previously ignored. They become aware of reactions that feel stronger than expected. They notice thoughts that continue returning no matter how much they try to focus elsewhere. What they believed was simple attraction begins revealing itself as reflection. Jung explained that every person carries hidden dimensions within their personality. Some parts are expressed openly, other parts remain hidden in the shadows. The shadow is not made only of darkness. Sometimes it contains courage, sometimes it contains strength, sometimes it contains dreams, emotional depth, wisdom, and qualities we have never fully accepted within ourselves. When someone enters our life carrying those qualities naturally, a powerful emotional response is created. Your soulmate may observe your calmness and suddenly become aware of the noise inside their own mind. They may witness your patience and recognize their own restlessness. They may observe your independence and begin questioning why they depend so heavily on external approval. What affects them is not only who you are, it is what your existence reveals about them. The impact does not always come from dramatic moments. It does not always come from endless conversations. Sometimes a person becomes unforgettable because they opened a door inside us that we never knew existed. Your soulmate may begin understanding that your presence challenged their old beliefs about love, identity, and connection. They may realize that before meeting you, they measured relationships through comfort and certainty. After understanding you, they begin seeing relationships differently. They begin seeing them as opportunities for growth. They begin seeing them as opportunities for transformation. Growth often begins with discomfort, because awareness changes everything. Once someone recognizes a hidden part of themselves, they cannot pretend it does not exist. Your soulmate may start noticing patterns in their decisions. They may recognize fears hidden inside their reactions. They may become aware of desires they ignored for years. They may realize how often they avoided vulnerability. They may notice moments when they confused emotional control with emotional distance. Jung believed that genuine connection does not happen when two perfect people meet. It happens when two people become willing to face what they see reflected in each other. That reflection can feel intense. It requires honesty. It requires courage. It requires growth. It asks people to stop hiding from themselves. So when your soulmate discovers the truth about you and feels emotionally shaken, it does not necessarily mean they are losing themselves. It may mean they are finally meeting themselves. Through your authenticity, through your depth, through your presence. They begin recognizing parts of their own soul that have been waiting quietly to be seen. And once that awakening begins, the relationship becomes more than connection. It becomes transformation. Authenticity leaves a lasting impact because it reaches deeper than attention ever can. Carl Jung believed that one of the greatest challenges in life is becoming who we truly are, instead of becoming who the world expects us to be. Many people spend years seeking approval, recognition, and certainty through performance. They adjust themselves to fit expectations. They hide their thoughts to avoid rejection. They become versions of themselves designed to be accepted. But Jung argued that this path gradually creates distance from the soul. Eventually, every person reaches a point where pretending becomes more exhausting than being real. Your soulmate may have once believed that connection depended on constant communication, pursuit, attention, or obvious displays of affection. But as they learned the truth about you, they discovered something deeper. They realized that your presence affected them because you remained connected to yourself. You did not force understanding. You did not chase validation. You did not constantly seek approval. You simply continued becoming who you truly are. People may remember those who entertained them for a season, but they rarely forget those who revealed truth to them. Authentic people become unforgettable because they give others permission to stop pretending. When someone encounters a person who does not constantly seek approval, something begins changing inside them. They start questioning their own masks. They begin wondering how much of their life has been guided by fear instead of truth. Jung described the journey toward wholeness as individuation. It is the process of becoming integrated and complete by accepting every part of ourselves instead of living only through appearances. This journey is not easy. Authenticity does not always create comfort. Sometimes it creates distance. Sometimes it leads to misunderstanding. Sometimes it requires standing alone for long periods of time. But the reward is freedom. Your soulmate may begin realizing that your value never came from being chosen by others. Your value came from knowing yourself even when recognition was absent. They understand that your calmness was not created by certainty about outcomes. It came from trust in your own identity. They realize that your silence was not emptiness, it was confidence. They recognize that your emotional depth existed whether anyone noticed it or not. Authenticity creates a unique experience because it cannot be copied. Attention can be imitated, charm can be performed, attraction can be manufactured. But authenticity carries a presence that people feel long before they fully understand it. That is why it leaves such a lasting impression. It reaches beyond appearances. It reaches beyond expectations. It reaches beyond words. And once someone experiences that kind of authenticity, they rarely forget it. Because what they remember is not simply the person they met. They remember the truth they discovered. They remember the growth that followed. They remember the awakening that changed the way they see themselves, relationships, and the world around them. And that is why some connections remain alive in the heart long after the moment itself has passed. Not because they were perfect, not because they were easy, but because they revealed something real. And once something real is seen, it can never be completely unseen. This may be one reason your soulmate feels emotionally shaken after discovering who you truly are. They expected to find someone waiting to be understood. Instead, they found someone who had already started understanding themselves. They expected dependence, but they discovered depth. They expected certainty, but they found wisdom. They expected an ordinary connection, but they encountered something that challenged the way they viewed relationships altogether. The more they learn about you, the more they begin to realize that your strength was never based on external validation. Your confidence was not created by constant approval. Your value was not dependent on recognition from others. You had already started building a relationship with yourself long before they fully understood who you were. This realization can be surprising because many people assume that connection is built through need. They believe that closeness comes from seeking something they are missing. But what they discover in you is different. They discover someone who is growing, learning, and becoming more aware of themselves. They discover someone who does not define their worth through another person's attention. They discover someone who continues moving forward even when no one is watching. And that changes everything. Carl Jung believed that becoming yourself is not selfish, it is necessary. He believed that only people who truly know themselves can create honest relationships. Without self-awareness, relationships often become performances. People hide behind expectations. They wear masks to gain acceptance. They become versions of themselves they think others want to see. But real connection cannot grow through performance. It can only grow through authenticity. That is why this connection feels so powerful. It is not built on pretending. It is not built on illusion. It is built on the gradual discovery of truth. The lesson hidden inside this experience is simple, yet deeply meaningful.